Oh, 20 seconds. I'm just a little early, Scott.
No problem, buddy. You have a little bit of stress in your voice.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
Oh, live. Okay, welcome to H3 Hope, Healthiness, and Happiness. Hope, Health, and Happiness. That's what it is. I am the acapellist, and with me is Brother Scott Sweetman, and we are here for another beautiful conversation. What am I going to learn tonight, Scott? What's going to happen tonight?
Well, we're all going to learn, I hope, a little bit about rituals. And rituals mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And the question I asked was, what part do they play in our lives? Are they important? Are they related to H3? Health, happiness, and hope. Are they connected? What do you think?
I would think that they are. I would think, yeah, like as an example, if you do some kind of morning meditation and or you go out and stand in the grass and, be thankful for another day kind of a thing. I think those are important rituals, right? So that those would contribute to your health and happiness and your
Well,
level
it's sorry, your level
and
of
your level of hope, I said as well. I put happiness, but I didn't say hope. So yeah, okay.
no problem. It's true. One of the things that when I started to do the research is they're very quick to make a difference between ritual and habit. So
Right.
as you know, I have a degree in comparative religion, and so I study religion a lot. But for this, I turn to the world of psychology because we're talking a lot about that, and it sort of pairs well with what I know from religious studies. And habit is something that we can associate an outcome to, right? Like brushing your teeth every night. It's a habit. It's something we do that we know that if we brush our teeth, it's supposed to make there's a reasonable expectation that we won't get as many cavities, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where a ritual is the action. They call it outcome negative, which I pondered that for a long time. Why they'd call it outcome negative, I still don't know why. But what they're saying is that a ritual may have no direct connection to the desired outcome. Okay?
Okay.
So, for example, if you spill salt, what are you supposed to do if you spill salt?
Well, I know some people go and throw it over their right shoulder, I believe. Something like that. Is that how it works? I think that's what you're supposed to do.
Is it right? I think it's left.
It's left shoulder. Okay. Yeah. All right. And then what's the
How do
rationale behind that again? That's to kind of so that the devil doesn't come get you or something. Is that what it is?
that?
Oh, lost your audio. You mean Scott's just getting his audio back together? It'll only take a second. Apparently, StreamYard doesn't play nice with. Can't hear you. No.
How about now?
Hey, there you are. Okay. Yes. Okay. So
Yeah,
you
I
were
don't
just
know
going to
why.
explain to me the whole salt spilling and throwing it
Yeah.
over your left shoulder. What's that mean?
Well, I don't know about the left, right, but I do know that salt almost the world over is considered cleansing. And if you think about it biologically, salt does kill lots of things. Not
Sure.
all of them bad. But a lot of religions, a lot of folk religions use salt. In Japan and other Asian countries, there'll be a little dish of salt in a perfect little cone on an entranceway. And in theory, evil can't cross that threshold.
Oh.
So salt is almost universally sort of a protection from evil, a cleansing thing. Sumo wrestlers, have you ever seen sumo?
I watched it on TV once. Yeah.
Yeah, they toss salt to purify the ring.
Ah,
So you see
interesting.
them tossing salt. Yeah.
Yeah.
Akazuki beans, red beans. I was surprised. I thought they were a Japanese thing. No, they're used in Korea as well. I think parts of China. I don't know about the Philippines. Do you know what Akazuki beans are? They're the red sort of sweet beans.
I don't think I've ever had them.
Oh, well, we'll get you some. They make jam out of them. They're quite wonderful, but they are a bean. To Western taste, they're a little gritty. You know how our jam is very gelaty?
Yeah.
These are kind of pasty because they're made out of bean, right? They're almost like hummus in texture, but they're sweet and they're red. Anyway, quite pleasant.
So they're a dessert type bean. Is that what it is?
Yeah, they are. Yeah, but now I could, and Japanese chefs out there can roast me. I don't know if it's exactly the ones they make out of the jam, but it's the same family. They have the same or very similar names. So yeah, it's a red bean. So in English, we usually call it red bean jam, or that's what Japanese people translate it as. But,
yeah.
Cool. It's often in pastries. It's very, very sweet. So universally, there's things that are considered cleansing, protective, and often rituals will contain elements of this. Now, I can almost hear people saying, "Oh, that's superstition." Superstition doesn't require an active component. A ritual requires an active component.
Okay. Right. Okay.
But they're not exclusive. So some superstitions can involve an active component. In lots of Asian countries, Japan, for example, what happens if you whistle at night? You're not supposed to whistle at night. If you're out walking with a Japanese person and you start to whistle, they will like, shh, stop. Dame. Bring snakes.
Bring snakes.
The superstition, if you whistle at night, it will bring snakes. Dangerous.
Wow.
Don't do it. So, interesting things like that. But ritual is something that we don't associate directly with the outcome. A habit is something that we directly associate with an outcome, right? So if I do this, I know this will happen, or I presume I'm pretty presume. But in a ritual, there's not necessarily a direct connection, right? So if we think about rituals in Christianity, which many of our listeners, viewers, will be familiar with, prayer, right? Prayer, the rosary is a type of ritual that I enjoy personally, and there's no direct connection between saying the rosary and some action, right? There's a belief that it creates favor and it builds relationship and it pays homage to God and lots of different things. I don't want to get too far into that, but the point is there's lots of rituals. Ethnographers, psychologists say that as long as there's been people, we've had rituals. As far back as we can go, there's evidence that we perform rituals. And every culture has rituals. Sometimes a ritual in one culture is bad, and in another culture, it's good. Exactly the same behavior. But it's still a ritual in both. So,
hey, how did you distinguish again between ritual and habit? So how are those different?
Habit is something that we do. I should pull up the exact definition here because I have it. Habit is something that the action is directly associable to the outcome. Brushing our teeth is
okay.
Right? Brush our teeth. Why? Because we can connect it directly to not having as many cavities.
Right. Got it.
If we don't brush our teeth, we're going to have more cavities. If we brush our teeth, we have less cavities.
Right.
Where if I do the rosary, there's lots of things that may affect, or nothing it may affect. Like there's no direct connection.
What if that ritual brings me peace?
Well, that's a different story, but that's not directly connected to something that we can quantitatively say.
Okay.
Although we can, right?
Yeah.
Rituals is symbolic behavior. That's how a lot of people define it, as something that represents something else, although that gets a little shaky too. Rituals, and this is where it gets really confusing. Great article written about, and the title is From Loved Ones to Lotteries, Rituals and Experiencing Loss. Academic article by a couple of researchers looking into it. They talk about, for example, basketball star Michael Jordan. When he played for the Chicago Bulls, he wore his North Carolina shorts under his Chicago Bulls every game he played. It was a ritual that he had. Wade Boggs, famous third baseman for the Boston Red Sox, woke up at the same time each day, ate chicken before every game, took exactly 117 ground balls in practice, took batting practice at 5:17 on the dot every time, and ran sprints at 7:17. And he also wrote the Hebrew word chai, which is living, in the dirt before each time he batted. Was he Hebrew? No. Was he Jewish? No. Okay. But that was his ritual. So in sports, we see a lot of ritual take place, and it plays out. They did an experiment. Let me give you an example of this. And they took a bunch of people and golfers, and they gave them what half the group was given a lucky golf ball. Okay, researchers said this is a lucky golf ball. You're gonna have good luck with this one. The other group were just handed a golf ball. Okay, then they were sent out to do golf tasks. I'm not a golfer. I don't know what a golf task is. I imagine it's hitting the ball around towards the holes. But the people, they performed motor dexterity skills, basically, right? And then there was another group that the researcher said, I'm going to cross my fingers for you when you do this. Okay? And because that's different, right? So one, they actually physically had something, right? One, they had nothing, the control group, and another one, they didn't have anything, but the researcher said, I'm going to, cross my fingers. You're going to have good luck during this task. Okay. And as we can imagine, that the people who were given the lucky golf ball performed better. The people who were given I'm going to cross my fingers for you performed second best. And the people that were just handed a golf ball performed third best.
Okay.
And that is consistent with academic research. So it's pretty interesting, right? When you start to look at it and so I'm getting this information right now. I'm looking at an article in Scientific America called Why Rituals Work. There are real benefits to rituals, religious or otherwise. And so they're saying it doesn't have to be a religious exercise. You don't even have to believe, right? Somebody says this is a lucky golf ball. You don't have to believe in lucky golf balls. You receive benefit from that. Your performance. That's really interesting.
It is.
Do you have any rituals that you do that involve objects?
Well, I have a scarf. This one here.
Hugging scarf?
This is my hugging scarf. So when I hug people, I don't know if that's a ritual. I think it kind of is. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I've been hugged by the hugging scarf and the acapellas. It was a ritual. Yeah, absolutely. I have this thing. I don't know. Can you see this? Does it look crazy?
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks crazy. It's not a keychain. There's this is a good luck charm from a shrine. Oh, my camera's blanking it out. It's not covered in dots, but it's the same color as my green screen. I just realized, and that's why it looks. The camera's greening it out. But it's got a ceramic Neko that Sabrina gave me. It's got a panda that Katrina gave me. It's got a Natsuki, this little wooden carved lion dog, and a kitsune, which means a lot to our family. You've probably seen, I can't show it in the camera. I can't turn my wrist around the right way. There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Kitsune tattoo. This hangs above my bed, and whenever I go to bed or get up, I touch this. And whenever somebody comes in and checks on me and I'm okay, they touch this. Right? And so this is just our little ritual, and sort of we think that this is absorbing that positive energy. I get up and I'm happy. I'm alive. Yay! I touch this. Everyone comes in, checks on me. Oh, Dad's alive. Scott's alive. Touch this. And so for us, it's a ritual that we interact with this crazy little thing every 3-4 times, maybe more a day, depending on what's going on. That's a ritual. We can't associate that with any type of solid benefit. Do we believe it? Yeah, and if we forget, will somebody turn around and come back down the hall and tap this? You bet. Every time. Do you have anything that crazy in your life?
No. No.
He's like, no, I definitely do not. I'll make you one, Al.
All right. Okay.
It's been theorized though that this is really an important human. I want to be careful not to say need, but it's described often as a need. And we see it a lot during loss, right? I know when I was an undergraduate, I studied the community of the living and the dead in medieval England, the relationship between the two. They didn't believe that the dead were gone. They believed they were just in a different place. Well, that's my Tamagotchi saying demons coming. So, and when I was going to university, often when somebody would pass away, somebody's aunt or uncle or cousin or something, they would come to me and they would say, "Oh, you study this dying stuff. What am I supposed to do? Do I call them? Do I send a gift? Do I cry? Do I not cry?" And it's because we in modern society don't have a lot of rituals to deal with grief, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When you were young, did you go to many funerals?
No. I think I went to a couple. Yeah, I can't remember being young going to many funerals. Yeah.
Yeah, not so many when I was young. But have you been a pallbearer before?
I don't think I have.
It's first time for me was in Japan. An English fellow died in an accident, and I was a pallbearer.
Mm-hmm.
It was quite interesting, very ritualistic job. Carried his body in the casket to be cremated. His funeral was kind of a mix of Japanese, because he married a Japanese girl that had only been married for 6 months, less than 6 months. And so his parents came from England, and we had a Christian funeral. They were Church of E, Anglican, like I am. And so we had a Christian funeral, and then we had a Japanese funeral afterwards, Shinto funeral. So, and he was carried in a coffin, a Western coffin, but then he was cremated so that his wife could have his ashes and perform the rituals that she needed to perform or believed in. So, what's your personal feeling on sharks, Al?
Sharks?
Yeah.
I'm not fond of them.
Yeah. There was some research, and it's really interesting because this, I think, was he a language specialist? He was studying a small island community in the Pacific, and they were fishing. Everyone on the island basically was a fisherman or married to a fisherman or daughter or son of a fisherman or someone to a fisherman. And they had two places they fished. One was farther away from the island, and there were sharks in that water. And another one was sort of in a closed bay where the sharks didn't come for whatever reason. And depending on what time of year or the fishing conditions, the fishermen would have to either go, they didn't really have a choice, the lagoon where it was safe or out where it wasn't safe and sharks were known to be and attack people. And so they had a very elaborate system of rituals before they would go out into the shark water. But the other water, they would just walk in and fish and swim and do whatever they wanted to do. And one of the things that shows us is often rituals, the need for rituals increase according to the perceived danger or possibility of loss.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's why we see so many rituals around death and losing loved ones, is that, on the scale of things that we can lose, that's probably up there with the highest is that, right?
Yeah.
So can you imagine how researchers study this in a direct way without like bumping somebody off?
No. How do they study this?
Yeah. The one researcher was really funny. He said, the Ethics Commission really looks down on arranging for people to suffer human losses. So they had to come up with another plan. And they found out a way to induce loss in a very easy and simple way. And what kind of losses would you think do you feel that are lost kind of every day?
Well, obviously you lose somebody you love, or you become bankrupt, or lose your home, or you get divorced, right? That's if it wasn't your idea, that it would be a loss, right? So
Second, you're right. A loss of like a breakup, not necessarily divorce, but a breakup is like number two on the amount of rituals that people have associated with relationships. Death is number one, and sort of number two is a divorce or a breakup. And they did some really interesting research we can talk about. But sort of the gold standard of research is they realized, I think it was during the 70s or 80s, they brought students in from a class. So these students all know each other. And they explained, and this, at that time, $200 was a lot of money, especially to students, right? And they did this at the Harvard Business School. Actually, the Harvard Business School has put a lot of money into this research, and I'll explain why in a little bit. But they wanted to come up with a way to test loss. So they brought in 20 students, let's say, from the same class. Everyone sort of knew each other. And they talked about how one student randomly would be given $200 cash money, and that student was to immediately leave the room. Okay? And that's a lot of money. And so they picked a random person, give them $200 cash so that everyone could see him or her getting the cash, left the room. Then they divided everyone into two groups, okay? And they talked to the groups, and they encouraged the groups to imagine. Sometimes they did it before, sometimes they did it after they awarded the money. Imagine what they were going to do with the money, right? Like what that $200 cash would mean to a starving student.
Mm-hmm.
And so they had one group, and that group was to draw a picture of how they felt about their loss, right? And
About the loss that they didn't get the $200.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
The other group was given a little ritual, and they were supposed to draw this picture of how they felt. Then they were supposed to sprinkle salt on this picture, and then they were supposed to tear the picture up and throw it out.
Okay.
Two groups. These are the two things they were asked to do. Then afterwards, each of the students was given a survey, a test, to measure their grief, their feelings of loss over this $200.
Mm-hmm.
Universally, the group that just drew the picture felt worse. They experienced more loss. The made up was completely imagined. The researchers just said, what kind of crazy stuff can we do? That was a ritual. And they said, oh, let's use salt. Salt's used all over the place. Let's tear it up, because in relationships, when people break up, the thing they do most is tear up all the pictures of them together, right? That's sort of a ritual. And the group that had this little ritual attached to it felt less grief than the group that just drew the picture. I find that to be amazing.
It is. Yeah. Huh.
And so what they took away from that is they took away from it that it doesn't have to be as serious as someone dying. It doesn't have to be the ending of a relationship. That in a work environment, and this is by the Harvard Business School in a study, a long, big, broad study called Working Knowledge. They publish it under a group of articles called Working Knowledge. And what they were looking at is that rituals are possibly a way for organizations to help employees with morale and productivity, right? So if like not getting a contract, right? So, I mean, Harvard Business School, they're talking about, bidding on contracts. They're talking about the competitive world of business and finance. What happens when you lose? What happens when a team's worked 12 months on securing a contract and they don't get it for whatever reason? And, they've looked at counseling, they've looked at all sorts of other things, but they started to look at rituals. A, they're cheap. They don't have to be expensive. B, they can be very personal, right? They don't need to be formal. They don't need to be tied to a religion. The little, sprinkling salt on the pitcher and tearing it up isn't prescribed, as far as I know, by any religious group or organization. And Harvard is still looking into how rituals can be used to help boost morale and productivity in the workplace.
Go ahead.
Sorry. They did find, though, that there's a little bit of human nature that pops up here. And that's the line between rituals and obsessive behavior is blurry. And because it does give us relief, there's a risk, like alcohol or drugs or other substances that can be abused, is that using rituals to help you feel better or feel less loss or feel less negative can become obsessive. And, like they use the example of tearing up your picture of an ex can be a helpful ritual. But if you call your ex every night at midnight and 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock for a month, then maybe you need a different kind of help. The rituals not the way to go. So Harvard's saying, yeah, there's some fertile ground here, but we need to be careful about that thing. What do you think about observing rituals? Do you think that has effect? Or do you think it's more if people are involved in them?
I don't know. I imagine if it's something meaningful to you, like if you understand what the ritual represents, right? They're using the salt because it is a purifying thing. They're ripping up this because it's to show that it has no power anymore or whatever. I think if a ritual was explained to you, here's the purpose of this ritual, or here's why we do this ritual, then an observer, I would think, would also benefit from it. Is that what you would suggest?
That's true. They did an experiment, again, the Harvard Business School, where one group made powdered lemonade in a prescribed way, because the Harvard Business School is very interested in one area of rituals, and that's food. And again, almost universally, you're a cook, right? You cook vegan food. Yeah. I know you do. I've talked to you when you've been cooking and you've had to say, look, I got to go and burn this. And one of the things they did through a lot of research is that if you participate in the preparation of food, it tastes better. If there's some kind of ritual associated with it, and they said, first of all, the marketing group said, no, it's all marketing. That's why they feel better. If there's an expensive bottle of wine, the maitre d' brings it out instead of your waiter, and the sommelier comes out, and there's a little ritual attached with that, and that's why. But Harvard put a lot of money into this, and they stripped all those things out, and they found no. Ultimately, participation in it improves the taste of food, regardless of what it is. And to give you an example of how extreme they took that, is they even tested it on a carrot.
A carrot.
Plain ordinary garden carrot. Okay?
Right.
One group was told, cut it this way and then cut it this way diagonally. It'll improve the taste and more air can get at it and whatever. That group reported better taste than the group that simply cut it and ate it. But getting back to the lemonade.
So there's the participation, but there was also the belief, or they were told, if you cut it this way, that enhances the flavor of the carrot. If they believe that, then it would enhance the flavor of the carrot. Is that there was their participation, but also, the reason why you're cutting it this way is because that carrot's going to taste way better if you do it this way, right?
You're a research scientist now. That's what they believed, and there is a small component of that. Okay. But when they didn't tell them, they still got amazing results. And so that's what they looked at. They anticipated if somebody tells you it's going to be better and you believe them, then that necessarily, and that's where the marketing people said, no, it's not ritual, it's our marketing, right? Like we tell you it's better, so you believe it's better. But the lemonade test, and they did this thousands of times, One group made ordinary powdered lemonade, and they were told to stir it this many times this way, and then stir it this many times this way, and then tap twice on the top of the, jar, and then set the spoon down over here, and then pour with their left hand or whatever. No explanation, just a set of instructions on what to do. And that group reported that the lemonade tasted better than another group who just was given the package and said, here, make lemonade. And the group that watched them make the lemonade had a slight increase above the group who just made the lemonade.
Got it.
But not to the extent of the people who actually followed the steps.
Okay, so now, just thinking of that, you're very familiar with like Japanese tea ceremony protocol, right? Like you're an expert in this, right? And so is that a ritual? That ceremony, is that a ritual?
Absolutely. No
Okay.
question. And that's one of the things that they talk about with food is that large companies like Reese's, we've talked about how they study, the addictive power of sugar and fructose corn syrup and all of those things. But they've also become experts on creating that idea of ritual. Do you remember the whole ad about, do you eat the red ones last? When you eat your Smarties, do you eat the red ones last?
Oh, yeah. I do. Yes. Yeah.
They were creating a ritual. They were, oh no, I eat the green ones first.
Yeah.
I always eat the green ones first. Oh yeah, I eat the red ones first. And so that marketing was really about creating ritual in people, knowing that ritual improves people's satisfaction. So creating a ritual around eating it, they increase people's satisfaction with the taste.
Okay. Interesting,
right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So all of this gets really, really good. But as I said, they tried it right down to carrots, plain ordinary carrots, and it worked fine on carrots. And so Harvard's really convinced that ritual has an important part in business, not only in customer satisfaction, but also in team development and healing, or part of the grieving process when there's a loss at work, or when things don't go well, or when they're downsized or whatever. One of the things they looked at, though, is, and we talked a little bit about why it matters. And they went to South America, and they looked at South America. South America has great religious traditions. You have Christianity, you have indigenous religions, you have belief systems, you have very passionate believers that are very active and very Catholic Church. Philippines and other Southeast Asian countries in South America are the most active areas for growth in the Catholic Church anywhere in the world, part of the culture. But they started to look at South America, and one of the things they looked at was, are all rituals the same, right? Does it matter what the ritual is? And it does matter. And what they found in South America is that the more involved, the more complex the ritual, the more strength people believed it had.
Okay.
Right.
So the more basically energy that they had to put into it, the more benefit they were going to get from it, kind of a thing.
Exactly right. So the more steps, like if there was a component in memorization, if they had to do something at a certain time of the month, if there was a timing component, a memory component, a situational component, a physical component, you had to collect these things and bring them to one place. Those were considered extremely powerful rituals. Where something
I do have, when you're asking me about rituals, and I don't think I said that I really had any, but once the first Sunday of every month, I fast. So from like Saturday night until Monday morning, I don't eat. And that's, I guess, a ritual. Well, no, maybe it's more of a habit, because it has like a very direct health benefit for me. I'm not saying that works for everybody, but for me, it certainly does.
And that's where I sort of wonder, though, because often with those things, for me, there's things that I do that have real tangible benefits, so I'd call them a habit, but they also have a ritualistic component where I just think that it's good luck, or that I think that somehow I'm currying favor with God, the gods, whatever we have out there. Do you ever get that sense when you're doing some of your habits that there's a sort of a mystical component to it? I want to be careful what words I use.
Yeah, well, like sure, that, like, let's say it's just like a random act of kindness, that there's kind of there's karma associated with that, right? That what you're giving out is what you're getting back, kind of a thing, right? So
There's a speaking of that. There's a great article in Yes magazine, Solutions to Journalism, and it's an opinion piece, and it's written by a woman who was in the region of the Iraq-Iran war, and she spent most of her childhood there. Millions of people were killed, and like she said, horrors of war, freedoms were being taken away. Women went to sleep and they woke up the next day and they couldn't wear their clothes anymore. They had to wear, what she calls restrictive clothing. I don't want to put my words into that. They were forced, in her words, to ditch their previous lifestyle. They couldn't drive. They had to cover their bodies. They had to cover their hair. They lost their right to jog, to ride a bike, to sing in public. You'll like that one. Singing.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah. You had a lady who you met from Iraq. Yeah. Am I correct?
Yes. Iran. She was in Iran. And Jamila. Yeah, Jamila is her name. And then I was kind of hosting a little singing show. I don't know exactly how that happened, but singing and songwriting show. And then she had said in Iran she can't sing, and then we said, well, can you sing here? Is it safe for you to sing here, like virtually, right, with us? And she did, and it was beautiful. Yeah, it was a very special moment that, she felt we were all very honored that, she got to do something and express herself, and we could hear her voice, and we could appreciate her, just the freedom from expressing herself. That I thought it was beautiful. Yeah,
absolutely. And this article is like that too. And they talk about how they were very lucky in Persian culture. They have a very rich heritage of ceremonies, rituals, and things, and a lot of them like are 3,500-year-old Zoroastrian, which is the foundation of the Persian Empire, Zoroastrian ceremonies. And she said, it was really hard. They in a lot of places they couldn't go to their religious counselors because they were suffering religious persecution. Religious leaders were being forced to take a hard line, or they would disappear in the night. Those kinds of things. And so, professional help in terms of psychology or employee benefits, those types of things were just not available to anyone. They were really fighting for survival. And she said that what they turned to was the older people in their community started to share their traditional ways of healing and dealing with those things. And she describes one where in the spring, so they celebrate the Persian New Year during the spring equinox. Okay. And she describes that a ceremony that they do is they create a bonfire, and they all gather around it. They share food and do things. And then as it burns down a bit, they jump over the bonfire. They sort of dance and jump over the bonfire. And they believe that cleanses their inner landscape. And as they're jumping over the fire, they divest themselves of all of their maladies and their negative energy and everything that's not right in themselves. They feed the fire with this negative energy. And the fire is grateful for that. And all of these negative things get burned up in the fire. And when they land on the other side, they feel cleansed of these things. It's a very cleansing type of ritual ceremony. Doesn't it sound wonderful? I'm going to jump into a fire.
I think I'd give it a go. I'd jump over fire if it wasn't like too big. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, in my case, it would have to be quite long. I would probably have to sort of duck and roll over the fire. A panda, I've seen how pandas do it. This panda can do it, no problem.
Exactly.
And then on the winter solstice, they stay up all night and they recite poetry, they eat fruits, and, preserved food, they play music and they dance, and in their own homes and in their family units or their community groups, and that symbolizes a survival over the cold, harsh winter, a lot like Christmas traditionally does, and they celebrate that during the dark times. And reading the article, you really get a sense that these rituals were her salvation from, her modern life being completely cut off. Just
right.
everything that, she had valued about being herself and being a woman and part of her culture was just denied her immediately. But she said the rituals really helped them survive. And those rituals became a survival mechanism to deal with the stressors and the pressure and the trauma of these other things, which is really interesting. They have studied those situations. A psychology professor from the University of Texas, and she talks about how rituals often signify a transition point. This is Dr. Christy Laguerre. And she says that often rituals signify transition points in individual lifespans. And that doesn't just mean like coming of age ritual, right? A ritual like the one I was describing where they jumped over the fire, that can be a way for her to transition her life, right? She can let go and say, yes, I've lost these things, but I'm entering into a new life. I can find rebirth and regrowth and happiness in this life. So Dr. Laguerre was saying that rituals both can demarcate a transition, or they can be a fruitful way to psychologically make the transition to a new area or a new life.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather had a story about that. When he was 16, they were given a buffalo. The thing was heavy. I put it on and it almost crushed me. I played football the whole time I was in high school. The thing must have weighed like 120 pounds. It was massive. But it was the only way they could survive. With this big buffalo coat and a really big collar, and then they wore a muskrat hat on top of it. They could take the grain into them, but it was like minus 40 or 42 or 43 with a wind chill. And when they received the coat and were allowed to take the grain in by themselves, they were a man. That was it. It made that transition. This coat. And so I found this coat in stuff, and I'm like, what's this, Grandpa? And he's like, oh, put it on. I struggled to get into this thing. I was like 15 or 16. He's like, there, if you could take the grain into town in the wagon, you'd be a man. Good to go. So do you have any of those sorts of rituals in your past, your family tradition that demarcate times?
I don't think so. I don't know. I probably should have prepared for this, Scott. Like scoured the archives or something. I said I probably should have. Do you hear me now?
Can't hear you.
Oh,
there you are. You came back.
Okay.
There you are.
All right. I don't think I have any rituals like that I can recall from my youth.
Okay. Well, it's interesting because once I didn't think so either until I started looking at it, right? And then I started to remember things that, oh yeah, okay, yeah, I did. And it was really interesting. So what these researchers said, and this, I'm just moving us now to University of Toronto because we're running out of time. The University of Toronto did a study on how rituals can help with anxiety, improve performance, and confidence. And this tied into, came on the heel of the work of the Harvard Business School and Texas University. And what they looked at is they encouraged participants to perform a personal ritual before completing a task that they had traditionally exhibited anxiety for. So you won't be sensitive to this one necessarily, but singing in public was one that a lot of people have anxiety over.
Mm.
And they, public speaking, performances, those types of things cause anxiety. And I'm getting some crazy feedback here now in the sound. Okay. Can you still hear me?
Yeah, sure can.
So what they would do is they would have people perform this task, and then they would have people perform a ritual and then this task. And they found that after the ritual, that the immune system had changed. And they could measure lower levels of cortisol, lower heart rates, lower blood pressure, and increase in the immune system function.
Wow.
After these rituals. And what was really interesting in the University of Toronto is that these rituals were very personal. They were not prescribed. Some of them were, I don't want to be judgmental, but sound bizarre to me. Like the person would stamp their feet and shake their body and, go down to the ground and come back up and turn around, all sorts of things. But as long as it was meaningful to them, it would have these effects: lower the stress hormone, lower the heart rate. All of these were measurable things. And again, almost universally, the participants found they would receive these benefits.
Well, when you're talking about that Wade Boggs guy as an example, those are all things that he created about 5-17 and 7-17, and that this kind of I was going to say rigidity, but this kind of a schedule kind of a thing. And that's obviously he had decided somehow, some way that was kind of when his energy was at its optimal, or he was right in the right space to do that or something. You know what? I do have a ritual that I was just thinking of. Every time I come down here to sing and I put my little twinkly lights on, that kind of thing. That's a ritual. Okay, I'm coming here. This is gonna be fun. I'm gonna enjoy this. This is a healing kind of a thing for me to do, and that it's, and I look forward to. I anticipate it. That that this is something. I set up obviously the expectation, and then I tell people how singing has helped. I publicly say about, creating a ventral vagus response, or that is a form of somatic experiencing, right? That it has healing value to singing. So obviously if I'm telling myself that, and then I come down to do my thing, it's going to be a good thing for my health, right? That's how it would work, right? So.
And I was sort of smiling when you said you don't really have rituals, because I observe you and have for quite a few years, and you have lots of rituals. You just aren't aware that they're rituals. They're little preparatory things you do to put your mind in, like before you shoot, you do a little thing, right?
Oh, I do.
Yes.
It's a little hip shaky thing, and then a little thing with the fingers. Yeah. I do that.
That's a ritual. That's exactly what the University of Toronto was talking about. That's a really personal ritual, and it doesn't even register, right, that it's a ritual, but it's automatic. It's something you do automatically before you do things, right? And I find it really interesting and exciting. They also looked at group rituals and what's the benefit of group rituals. And this was crazy, because they found that it multiplies. Is so that if you and I are doing a ritual together, the benefit to both of us multiplies. And so the more people that take part in a ritual, they don't necessarily have to be doing the same thing, but if there's awareness, it creates a connectedness. And as you know, psychologically, physiologically, when we feel connected to other people, what happens? Right? We become happier. We become, our stress level goes down.
You bet.
The drugs that our body produces balance out. Right?
Yeah.
Win-win and plus. And so University of Toronto, the Harvard Business School, all of them looked at it and said, there's something here in that. And of course, people that are involved in organized religion are going to say, duh, that's what we do. But the researchers said, look, that's true. No question, organized religion benefits from those rituals. But they also said, it doesn't have to be organized. It doesn't have to be somebody else telling you what to do. It can be something that you've developed on your own. It can be something that you've invented. But as long as you go through the process, we talked about this before. I hate smoking, but I love smoking my pipe. And it's the ritual of preparing it. I could prepare it, light it, and then put it down. The rest of it, I don't really get off on. But the tamping and getting the right tension on the surface and all of those things are really relaxing. It's like, oh, I feel just peaceful and go from there. So
do we all have rituals, and lots of time we're just not aware of them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really think so, Al. And I think that's like we were talking about, because I thought it was really funny when you said, oh, I don't think I have rituals. Because I know lots of your rituals. And I'm sure Corolla could write a book, and you about Corolla. The more we observe people, I think we become really aware. And it's a cue. Like I know in our family, I can tell when the girls are going to do something because they have a little ritual. They do before they do certain things, right? I can tell if they're getting ready to go to bed or they're getting ready to take a shower. Is it a habit? Some of it, but some of it doesn't serve any real purpose. It's like a dog that turns around before it lays down. If you really are into animals, Corolla can tell you about horses. Some horses, they have to do certain things before they'll eat. They have to do other things before they relax and, will start to perform, etc. So yeah, I agree with you, Al. I think that life has rituals built in. But I do think if we try and be aware of them, we can share them. We can, really participate in them more and benefit them more. It's like the tea ceremony. For me, it's very constricted. There's so many rules, but at the same time, not rules, because the number one rule is the guest should enjoy the experience. But then there's a whole bunch of things that say you should do this, you should do this, you must do this, you must do this. But overriding that is your guest should enjoy the experience. So even if something goes absolutely crazy, you have to roll with that, and you have to bring it to the point that your guest enjoys the experience. That's the whole purpose of that ritual.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a great way to think about life, because so many things we think that we have to have an immediate payoff. And I think we've gotten more materialistic that way. We don't do things unless we get an immediate payoff from it. Sometimes I think technology is bad for that. Well, I'm not wearing my Apple Watch right now, but it sets goals and it reinforces us, and we get in the habit of getting that pat on the back. It's immediate. If I walk so many steps or if I exercise for so much time, it beeps and lights up and sends all my friends a message saying, oh, Scott did this. Isn't he great? And I think we've come to rely on those things rather than believing and participating in rituals, which may not have an immediate feedback.
Right. So it's kind of like where sort of our patience has diminished with our attention span diminishing.
Yes.
Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Psychologist Robert Hobson says that rituals just aren't beneficial. They're absolutely essential. He believes that, and this ties in with exactly what you were saying, that rituals are innate to humans. That even if we believe we don't have any rituals, that if we're functioning human beings, we have them. That they're sort of a natural coping mechanism that we have.
So, that's an interesting insight. And thinking of that, then the self-awareness of your rituals is probably a way to enhance their value in your life, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
He says that we are an intensely social and ritualistic society, or species. Pardon me. It's important. Species. Take this piece out of our modern human narrative and you lose a piece of our history and humanity. And his concern was that as we start to rely more on technology, as we start to rely more on external methods of approval and reinforcement and those things, that we're in danger of losing that very contextual built-in mechanism for making ourselves okay,
Mm-hmm.
our mind and our body. And I thought that was a really interesting perspective. How do you feel about that one?
Well, here's what I'm telling you right now, Scott. This is life changing. This information you're sharing here, I'm going to be trying to examine my rituals that I just do without thinking. And I understand your thing about habits. The habits are something that has a direct health benefit, i.e., I'm taking the bacteria off my teeth if I'm brushing my teeth, that kind of a thing. So, but I think I'm going to try to be more aware of my rituals, and in so doing, maybe either, change them or maybe enhance them, make them more meaningful. Okay, this is a ritual I do, didn't realize it. Now I'm going to add something to it, light a candle, or whatever, I don't know, something to make it more special, more ritualistic.
One of the things that they prescribe is sharing it, because as we've talked about with singing, when two people are doing the same things, we start to resonate.
Yes.
Right? We've talked about that. And so rituals are a great way to help us sync up with each other.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good
So
idea.
I know, like I said, I chose to be an Anglican, and we have an order of prayer. We all are kneeling, we're all up, we're all shaking hands, we're all doing these things together. And you start to lose your personal stress and tension, and you start to feel the connection to all those. Of course, you don't love them all. There's some of them you probably don't like in a congregation. But because you're all doing the same thing together, there is that sense of connectedness, resonation, which I think is quite wonderful. And it doesn't have to be a congregation. It can be you and I. When we do our boo thing, I feel that same resonance, right? When we go shooting, I feel that resonance.
Right. No, that makes good sense. Yeah, it's just another kind of more like connection by itself is valuable, right? Yeah. But connection kind of with a shared activity, a shared purpose, same as eating together, right? Having a meal together, right? That's an extra thing besides a connection, right?
Yeah,
that part.
Amen. Great example. And I think that's why you and I love mentoring so much, is when you're sharing with a little person or somebody. It doesn't have to be a little person, but you're sharing something with somebody, and they're getting it, they're grokking it, right? You remember I grok from A Stranger in a Strange Land? Yeah. When they're grokking it, there's that feedback loop that occurs, right? And you're like, oh, I've shared this, and they're like, oh, I've got this, I'm going to share this with somebody else. And there's that whole wonderful, I get little tingles on my arms just thinking about that mentoring process, that senpai kohai. You share, it comes back to you. You share, it comes back to you. The other person sharing and taking, sharing and taking. And I think that that's a wonderful, wonderful human experience that the animal world does it too. But unfortunately, I don't think they're able to be aware of it at maybe the level that we can be aware of that state of being.
Okay, Scott, do we have more to add to this episode, or are we?
I think that we've done a good job of this one. I agree with you. I think that your prescription is a great one for everyone. Take a look at your life and try and find those little rituals. Try and demarcate them and say, oh yeah, and actually be aware of them, right? Like they always say, when you're eating, taste the food. It's when you don't taste the food that you're going to get fat and you're going to eat stuff that's bad for you. I think the living's the same way, right? Enjoy it. It's a limited resource. We're all going to die, so might as well enjoy whatever time we have. Mm-hmm. And I think that the whole ritual in your life thing, a bonus. I consider tonight's topic like a level up, right? It's a cheat code for life. Rituals can really help you resonate with yourself and each other.
Yeah. Whew. Well said, Scott Sweetman.
Well, thanks for sharing that, buddy. And I enjoy your rituals. I partake in your rituals all the time. And I'm glad you're going to explore those. So from the Acapellas, my friend Alan Friesen and myself, Scott Sweetman, thanks for joining us on H3 tonight. Enjoy some rituals of your own. And we'll see you back here next week on H3, 7 o'clock, Jess TV. Thanks, everyone.
Get 'em out, Sin.